Thank you to Nathan Lewis and to Montserrat College of Art for asking me to be part of your video series on color, which addresses the technical, perceptual, and conceptual uses of color. I'll begin by talking a bit about myself and then show images of my work as I go along. Thank you for your interesting questions, and hopefully I'll address them throughout my talk. My name is Angela Johal, and I paint full-time in my studio located in the San Francisco Bay Area where I grew up in the 60s and 70s. My work is very much about color. I want my paintings to be smooth, pristine, geometric, and hard edge, where the color draws the viewer in with less distractions such as brushy paint strokes, blobs, excessive pencil lines, drips, and so forth. After attending an art exhibition full of drip and pour paintings, I decided to paint my own hard-edged version of a geometric drip painting. It was also a very wet winter, and it looks like rain, and it also has a planetary feel. If I were to describe my paintings, I would say that my paintings are reflective of the California hard edge and psychedelic artists, textile design, and music from my childhood, relating also to the color field and op art painters. In 1985, I received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in painting from San Jose State University. In college, I painted primarily abstract figurative paintings in a klimt and expressive style with energetic black rhythmic lines and bright colors. There was rhythm and movement, pattern, bright color, and the figure seemed to float about in an alternate space. Later, I spent some time repurposing and creating intricate collages, reflecting on my childhood memories. This one is called Peace and Love, where I hand cut vintage images and layered them, and also did so with this collage called Seeing Through Space. Over time, my paintings became more geometric because I felt there was a lack of truthfulness in creating realistic illusions of things. I missed my painting when I was doing collage and felt that painting flat geometric shapes would be more truthful. I began painting geometric paintings freehand in oil. In this rite of passage series, the circular bands mark the passage of time that recalls the past and suggests movement toward a future state. The viewer becomes not the passive onlooker, but integral to the piece, where the directional selection reflects the viewer's state, whether mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical. The viewer may ascend or descend, receive or surrender. The color gradation is painted in flat color only, and an illusion of a gradation appears in each band, which is not actually there, but just an illusion. The white area appears here and in many of my paintings, suggesting another dimension, one that is infinite. So I decided to limit myself to geometric paintings and to have the color and the flatness of the painting as the subject, which is also reflective of the color field painters. My goal is to create illusions of 3D space with flat color only. My paintings also have a slight op effect, which helps to create this movement and rhythm. I call my paintings chromesthetic geometric paintings because they are painted in accompaniment to music, where both together react directly upon the emotions, where there is a kind of blending of the senses, a chromesthetic experience when heard sounds evoke an experience of color on the canvas. I would hope that the viewer may even experience sound when they view my paintings. I often title my paintings after musical terminology. This painting, You Hear the Colors, is about hearing color through music and how it's integral to my painting process. It has a planetary light show feeling, but the angle lets you know that it's not a landscape, or it would converge horizontally at the center instead of angular. I painted my Music of the Sphere series in response to studying Pythagoras in his understanding that a form of music resonates from the movement of the celestial bodies. Here, the viewer meditates on the blackened center, and the inner bands begin to pulsate and emanate outwards. Here's another in the series where the black note centers emanate color, which refers to the sound it emits. The black centers are very optical because of the black centers contrasted with the color gradations. White afterdots also randomly appear to be dancing about the canvas as the viewer's eye shifts. Here I've simplified the dots, and the variation of sound dots imply different sounds, which also adds a twinkling to the afterdots. The central areas where the black grids intersect pulsates with white dots at a closer look. The longer you look at this piece, the more you see. Shortly after I started this painting, we had an earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I almost called it epicenter. It could also look like a vinyl record, which I grew up listening to, and the bands of color emanate to the music. It also has a planetary feel. I like to have my paintings suggest multiple layers of meaning. With this painting, I created an alphabetical code with 26 sizes of dots corresponding to each letter and used a word puzzle that I translated into dots, which helped in making the dots actually appear more random. Yes, there are hidden words in there. As far as process goes, I began my process either by doing multiple pencil sketches or cutting and arranging shapes and gluing them down on paper until I'm satisfied with the composition. One that is balanced, which creates a calming effect, but also energetic at the same time. A final plan is drawn up with dimensions and transferred to a sanded canvas using straight edges, templates, and compasses. Here's an example of arranging multiple shapes in a random manner until I felt satisfied with the design. It has a figurative feel about it, and the colors are, of course, painted intuitively to music. Because the colors are random, the painting holds the viewer longer. And then I decided to turn it into a triptych and make it more complicated. Another variations on a theme painting, which is titled after musical terminology, is where I played with multiples of one shape until I got a surprise. New rounded shapes emerged, which gave the design a whole new layer of interest. Here I revisited shapes from the variations on a theme number 1 and played with them until I got this wonderful wave pattern. Or it could be umbrellas or commas if you look sideways. Working again with the same shapes, I discovered yet another larger rhythmic wave pattern that was even bolder. To calm it a bit, I chose cool ocean blues, seafoam greens, grays, and lavenders. Sometimes I have to rig things to get the shapes I want, like bending thin pieces of wood, such as in converging color, where I achieved the arched shapes in bending a thin piece of wood and drawing around it. I recommend using only professional quality paints and varnishing to protect your paintings. I often regret when I use newsprint or inferior paper or thin canvas material in college, and they didn't hold up over time. I use only heavyweight canvas, golden and Liquitex heavy body paints and varnishes. You can see how brilliant the colors are in this painting. Heavy body paints can often do the job in just one coat and sometimes two. I apply different sizes of tape to mask when I paint to get a neat hard edge, but freehand smaller shapes. Glowing halo effects form where the colors meet along the hard edge, similar to the effects of the early pointillist painters. I don't plan my colors, which is why they have a random appearance. I like to risk all once I have my stable drawing on the canvas and allow the music to influence my color choices intuitively. With this painting, I borrowed shapes from an earlier painting, but broke up the radiating beams and discovered that when the 4 points collide at the center, that a new star appeared. This painting is now part of an exhibition at the De Young Museum in San Francisco. When I paint, it's kind of like a puzzle that I must work through and solve, a balancing act, and usually about halfway, I introduce a toxic color just to challenge myself where I must save my painting from disaster. This, strangely enough, improves the painting, making it less predictable where it shows a sign of struggle. I think the viewer is smart and can see when you're being too safe, which gets boring. Here is my city trees painting. I added the bright orange-red color in the lower central rectangle just to challenge myself, and it turns out that it balances the upper left turquoise rectangle. Here I have a pattern with a color gradation, but I purposely added some color breaks, such as the grays and golds in the center, to create stopping points, where if the color gradation was too perfect, the viewer would be done looking much faster. Color choices can make or break a painting. With this painting, I use angles and color gradation, which gives a sense of 3D in depth. There is a lot of movement, which is calmed by the cool colors. But the shapes press upwards to the left where the viewer might quickly exit the piece. But the yellow-orange shape at the top left stops the eye and presses the viewer back down around the piece. What is most important is to keep the viewer's eye rhythmically moving about the painting, which combined with vibrant color may even react similarly to hallucinogenic drugs and creating a calming effect in the brain. Art can actually change your brain and give you a healthier mindset. Who needs drugs when you have art? This painting is called Euphonic Color, euphonic relating to sounds that are pleasing. Here, the flat, circular bands of color, painted intuitively, are cylindrical and appear 3D, but also connect in the central area to create a rhythmic wave effect. It can be hung vertical or horizontal. I purposely paint many of my paintings to be hung either way, which often creates a whole new painting. This painting has a strong optical effect. Here's another euphonic color cylindrical wave painting where I borrowed from the previous painting, but took away one cylinder. I think it is really good to borrow from your own work as much as possible. Artists do better when they place limitations on themselves and where you can add to, modify, and subtract from already good designs. Your body of work begins to have a relationship also when you do this. So one day I was staring at this painting and realized that if I line up the circular shapes, even though they enter at opposite ends, the centers would line up. So I created this. Another smaller euphonic color painting where the entrance points are alternating, but the centers line up and the wave is still there. This series also has an infinite white background. After looking at this design for a while, I decided to do a version in greens, where I would mix two converging colors to create an overlap color, which would create an illusion of transparency and make it so the eye could enter on either side. Figuring this out took a long time. Variations on a theme number 26 was created by taking one shape and repeating it in an interesting pattern. And here I have white interior areas that open up the painting, which was necessary since this was to be a very complicated color piece with a lot of illusions of transparency. Actually, there are two consistent hidden colors added to the central areas. You'll have to guess what they are. Sometimes you paint a painting that you like but don't love, like this one. With 32 colors, I created an interesting design inspired by a metal lit traffic sign that I studied when I was stuck in traffic one day. I changed it up a bit, and the afterdots pulsate a lot in the white areas, but it just needed something more. So I finally have come up with a solution, and this is it. This is called Rhythm and Color, where I took my design from 32 colors and improved it with overlapping dots with the mixed intersections creating a transparent effect. It's really good to revisit pieces and keep improving upon them. Here is Rhythm and Color number 3, where I added black central squares, which act as connectors, which emit different levels of sound, which creates a push and pull sensation. Geometric shapes appear in most of my work because I believe that they're easily understood by people of all ages, races, nations, and cultures. They speak to everyone. They can be easily understood, but very complicated at the same time. Geometric shapes are a balance between the world that is visible and the world that is invisible. They reach beyond what the eye can see. Thank you for listening, and I've enjoyed sharing my work with you. If you have any further questions, you can always DM me at Johal Geometrics on Instagram.